Great to be joined today by newest, although you've been around for a little while as an intern, start to be an employee, start to be a sports writer, Cassidy Hedesheimer. How you doing, Cassidy?
I'm pretty good, settling in. Second week back here full time, so it's been fun getting in the swing of things.
Putting you right to work on the high school beat. I mean, you get here and it's basically full speed ahead because this is the
Yeah.
hard time, the fast time, the busy time for high school sports. I know it very well. I covered a lot of preps back in the day. I was actually the preps team leader for 5 years in a previous life here at the Star Tribune. But so I know how hard it is to cover everything this time of year and to sometimes find unique stories because everything's kind of coming out like a fire hose right now and everything's just cover this, cover that. But you found a cool story about Elk River football, and I wanted you to tell me a little bit more about the offense they are running at Elk River.
Yeah, so even though the story's coming out now, this offense they're running isn't necessarily new. They have a very run heavy offense. Power T is the name, and this was something that I was learning a lot about. As I was working on this story. It's not a particular offensive scheme I had really covered before or watched even a lot of. But Coach Steve Hamilton brought it in to Elk River when he took over the program in 2011. They had been coming off a winless season in 2010 and was able to implement it and help them win, I believe, 2 state championships since then, the most recent being 2022, and have a lot of success on that front. And it's this very shifty offense that's interesting to watch. And as someone who, is new to the area, new to the state, and just in general Minnesota high school football, it was something that I think the watching experience really caught my eye because ahead of the game I was watching some clips and highlights online of the offense and kind of kept thinking like, oh, it's so odd that the camera operators are, they'll be focused on one player.
Right.
And they have the quarterback and 3 running backs lined up behind the offensive line. And, they'll follow one running back and in the middle of the highlight, it's like it'll shift and kind of you'll realize that the camera operator was just as tricked as the defense was for the other team. So yeah, it was fun to kind of go and write about it from the experience of, not just why is it hard to play against, but like, why is it hard to watch? Not hard in a negative sense, but hard in a way that is probably a good sign for Elk River. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's interesting. Like, how do they describe it? Because it looks a little bit like like a triple option, but it also looks like kind of like the wing T. Is it kind of like marrying those two things up essentially?
Yeah, I think when we were talking about it in the newsroom, I think that the comparisons to those things were brought up. I think when I was talking to the coach, both Steve Hamilton after the game, and then reading up on previous things that I believe Jim Paulson on the Preps Beat had written about it. Just it was kind of coming up how important it is in the style of offense to have just like a very disciplined offensive line, and how the blocking and the sort of trickery of it can come down to a difference between like a 4-inch step versus a 6-inch step. It's not only beneficial to have an explosive quarterback and good running backs, but also like having a line that's going to be able to give them viable paths that
Sure.
lean into that trickery. So it was kind of interesting, like learning about the necessities behind it.
Let's look at it for a little while. It's better to just than just talking about it. Here's an example of it. It was a 94-yard touchdown run by who is this running the ball here?
And this is Brecken, one of their there's a leading rusher. He's got 5 rushing touchdowns through 2 games this season. So yeah, just one of 3 options lining up back there. Yes, and then this is Dylan kind of posting up a similar run, and see him kind of break away, not necessarily unnoticed. He's got a couple he's got 5 guys now, but gets kind of a head start on them and puts his speed to work getting there across the field. So it's definitely an interesting experience. And like players talking to him, they're kind of saying like, you see the end zone, you're seeing the back of the end zone like before anybody else. And it's kind of like you break free and it's kind of an automatic touchdown. I think through their first 2 games, they've averaged is like over 490 rushing yards. I believe both games attempted 2 passes. So it's definitely like a very
yeah, it's old school. Yeah.
Yeah, one of those passes in last Friday's 50-14 win over Brainerd was a passing touchdown.
There you go.
So that they've got that option as well. But yeah, like run heavy, just putting up some massive rushing yards.
Yeah, and those highlights were from that Brainerd game. Does the quarterback ever get to run it, or he would get bored? I would think
he does.
Good.
I believe he had 2 rushing, or he might have had a passing and rushing against Brainerd, but he definitely had a pretty long rushing touchdown. But yeah, he has some good yards on the ground as well.
Okay. Well, what's the outlook for them this year? Are they feeling pretty good about being a contender again? What's up next for Elk River?
Yeah, I think that just being out there at the game, every team's gonna want to be at US Bank Stadium at the end of the year, but I think that this Elks team is feeling very confident. They knocked off two pretty good teams in their first 2 games.
Yeah.
And I think that they kind of the sentiment was that they have a more experienced group. And that's what a lot of this scheme kind of comes down to, is like discipline and knowing sort of this, the options that they have and when to break out of it and when to lean into it. I know Hamilton, and I talked with Brecken and then Gavin Schmidt after the game, and they were all feeling pretty confident. So I think that this is going to be a team that we're going to see, roll pretty deep into playoffs and really want to be there at US Bank and back to their, state championship contending ways of 2022. So.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, Cassidy, appreciate it. What are you working on next? You've been working on a few things already. What's next for you?
Yeah, working on some, getting into the thick of some volleyball and soccer coverage, kind of through the, latter half of those seasons, and into playoffs, and then doing some stuff on flag football, kind of the state of that in the state. So I've been out to a couple different places, talking to some different people. So that's been super cool. So yeah, just kind of jumping in and covering everything everywhere. I'll be at Lakeville North versus Lakeville South tomorrow, or this Friday, I should say. And yeah, just kind of everything and anything where I'm needed in prep sports world right now.
Awesome. Well, you're doing a great job so far. Good story. Appreciate you talking to me, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, appreciate it.